This scariest movie opened in Transcon, France in 1965, where a child played basketball. After playing, he moved to the father, who asked him to bring the alcohol from the basement. He found something odd here, but he moved forward by ignoring these mysterious sounds. Also, father preached and asked for forgiveness from God. Later, a young child, Jacques, moved to put the wine jar in its place, but suddenly a scratch appeared. After that, it exploded with a horrible sound. Jacques preferred to escape and updated father about the presence of the mysterious creature. Father also could listen to the ominous voice and chased it, which took him to the church. Father threatened this devilish presence to walk away and started praying. But this demonic Noon was not ordinary and appeared in Noon clothes. But her face was not different from the devil who burns father with her sinful powers. Jacques witnessed this horrible event, and we could also see a man coming out from this place. On the other hand, our leading character was shown to be none other than Sister Irene, who pushed the truck with other nuns because truck was stuck in the hole. She got out of trouble by keeping the wooden planks, but another problem was waiting for her. This problem was Deborah, who refused to confess anything. To persuade her, Sister Irene moved to her, and they discussed their past where Irene was sent by her father, and she pretended she didn't know about her mother. Further, her father forcefully sent Deborah because he believed his daughter would serve God for her whole life. After this conversation, another nun narrated the daring deed of Nun and Father Burak, who had killed a devilish nun with the holy blood of Christ. This nun was considered crazy and was in a mental hospital because she couldn't tolerate the incident. In reality, Irene was the Nun who obliterated the sinister Nun with bravery, but none knew about it, nor did she tell. Aside from this, boarding school was shown where girls captured the cockroaches and threw them into the principal's room. We could also see Maurice, who had a mark on his neck, revealing that the devilish nun possessed him. With a pleasant mood, he said hello to Sophie, who would play a stunning role in this movie. She met with Maurice and gave him a bracelet that she had created with her hands. Bully girls, Simone and Celeste, arrived and snatched the bracelet. Luckily, the principal came, and Maurice had gained the bracelet with his cleverness. Later, a carrier girl arrived at Maurice's place, and the door opened suddenly. After keeping all the things in its place, she heard a mysterious voice. She followed and looked at Maurice, who was acting weirdly. Watching his face, she was scared enough to death and tried to escape from there, but it was too late. He twisted her neck and killed her mercilessly. At night, Irene woke up and looked at Nun, who had updated her that someone had arrived to meet with her. When she moved to check on, she found Maurice was asking her for help. The scary thing is that he looked horrible with pointed teeth like a demon possessed him. Just then, Irene opened her eyes because her vision was becoming reality. The following day, the Vatican again arrived to meet with her and informed her about the mysterious events that were going on in the church. In Osteria, a priest had split his head with rosary, and nun killed herself on the church's stairs by shooting her. In Italy, a nun had hanged herself, and in France, a priest was burnt in his church. Also, this event had already elaborated in Scene 1. Father asked her to investigate the case because Father Burak had already died, and she was the only one who was their hope. She denied taking this case because she barely survived in Romania and couldn't put her life in danger again, but Father convinced her, and she was on the train to France. Soon, Sister Deborah joined her, who considered her mother like an angel, but she had no faith in miracles. In the classroom, Kate was taking the class when she gave them a break to fix the cabinet from Maurice. Now, Simon and his friends had gained the opportunity to bully Sophie. They took her to the restricted room where no one could go. In this shabby place, they planned to play the devil game, which she must watch at the devil's goat window. When sunshine fell on it, she could see the devil. By entrapping her in the talking, they flew away. Soon, she realized she was alone and ran to escape, but they had shut the door. Just then, a statue started moving to her and grabbed her attention. Not only this, but she could also see the abhorrent Noon. Before she could attack her, Maurice arrived and took her out. Also, he scolded the girls for molesting her. However, they had reached France, where she moved to the church. Nun was already waiting for them and updated her about people's perception that this place is cursed. When Irene was in church, she saw a vision in which Jacques handed her over Father's rosary. She inquired about the kid and any other personality who lived there. Another nun updated her about Maurice, who lived there but had moved now. Just then, she recalled about Maurice, who had saved her life. But doing this, a snack got inside of him. It means Maurice was in Sinister Nun's hand. Aside from this, Kate thanked Maurice for saving her daughter and asked her daughter to join her in class. She was chasing her mother and reached the wrong place. Here, she looked at the devilish nun around her before she could overpower her. Her mother had seen her. She didn't tell her mother about it. The scene changes when Deborah and Irene moved to the hotel they had already booked. But the astonishing thing was that it wasn't. Deborah was talking with the manager, and Irene moved outside to breathe in fresh air, where she met with Jacques, who was playing football. He told her about the incident and carried the father's rosary because he was scared. Saying this, he ran to his friends, and Irene followed him to get the answer. Unexpectedly, he had disappeared, and she had arrived at the lonely place. There were many magazines on the wall, and she could feel a mysterious presence. Irene looked at the magazine, whose pages were turning rapidly, and noon appeared before her. Just then, she jumped into the vision where someone stabbed St. Lucy, and her eyes were in her hands. Irene couldn't tolerate the pain, and she fainted. Deborah arrived and tried to awaken her, but all were pointless. At night, the principal had awoken and looked at Maurice at the door where her son had died. She asked Maurice what he was doing there, but he had no idea why he was there. He returned to his room with a shivering body, and the principal noticed the door was shaking even if the wind wasn't blowing. She entered the room and looked at a child holding a light. It was her son who had already died. His son started hitting her with a lantern and struck her until she died. On the other hand, Irene had awoken and had seen many things which would help her sort out this case. She knew the devilish nun needed the box but didn't know what was in it just then. Deborah revealed that Jacques arrived here and had given father's rosary. By checking the rosary, they found a peculiar sign in the hand of another dead priest. This can't be a coincidence. On the other hand, Kate went to the restricted room where she found the dead body of the principal. Cockroaches were crawling on her face. She was scared and informed everyone. Soon she realized Sophie was misplaced and told Maurice about it. Maurice had found it and cheered her mood by saying everyone was terrified, motivating them to do bigger things. Here, Sophie disclosed that something weird was happening there. She could feel the presence. To figure it out about the sign, they moved to Father, who had recognized the sign because it belonged to St. Lucy. Whoever had these signs was a descendant of St. Lucy, and the devilish nun wanted the eyes of St. Lucy. Through this, she could bring hell to the world. This devil was not ordinary because God had snatched her power for disobedience, and she wanted to grab her through these eyes. Also, Irene could use this relic to obliterate this devil as she had done with holy blood. But she needs to be careful because this devil can transform in any shape and could eliminate anyone by playing with their weakness. Before this, they should know where they could find the sacred eyes of St. Lucy. These eyes were kept by Jean-Paul Radar, who had hidden them in the chamber that had turned into a boarding school. So, they decided to move there where Maurice was residing. In the kitchen, Maurice was cooking food when Sophie joined him. We could see a pleasant understanding between them. By accompanying her, Deborah wanted to reach reality, and Irene revealed about her mother who was religious. Even though she was eligible to see a vision like hers, her father didn't trust her and tried to cure her. One day, she disappeared, never to be found again. However, Maurice was in Kate's house dancing with Sophie. Just then, Sophie insists her mother dance with Maurice. She couldn't refuse her daughter started dancing with him, and that was when something weird happened. Maurice felt unwell after looking at the deteriorated face nun picture on the wall. The picture started shouting, and Maurice took them outside and met with Irene. Irene was pleased to meet with him again, but knew that was the time to save them. Maurice revealed that the devil was here, and they were running from him. But Irene asked him to avoid Sophie and Kate because demons possessed his body. Listening to this, he was in shock, but soon, his body started cracking as if the devil was again overpowering him. When the devil occupied him, he moved to grab the relic, but Irene held him so that he couldn't succeed in his mission. As he had become a devil, stopping him was difficult. He throws her away, and when Deborah holds his neck, he smashes her on the ground. She didn't lose hope and gripped his leg, but it was futile because he had thrown her back with a single kick. At this time, Irene took help from the rosary and uttered sacred words. She ordered the demon to leave Maurice's body, and this divine miracle worked on him. He bent on his knees, and Deborah lost consciousness by hitting a wooden plank on his head. They bound him with an iron chain, and Irene asked where Maurice's direction was. It was the same room where people were dying. Moreover, they enter the deserted chamber where they try to get the clue of holy eyes. Unfortunately, they were unable to find it. At the same time, Sophie pointed toward the window through which they could see the devil when light fell upon it. Using the trick, Deborah put the light on the goat, creating a red light. Through the light, they started digging on the floor. Besides this, Maurice has awoken, and there was no difficulty in freeing himself from the chain. In the blink of an eye, he has released himself. On the other hand, Sophie looked at the window where the goat had disappeared and was frightened. Late at night, Simon was awakened by the noise coming from the second floor. She awoke Celeste and asked to check on who was there. She had no option except to obey her command because she was the leader. Also, Irene and Kate had found holy eyes. Deborah was also there and noticed Celesta. She was scared to watch a strange lady, but she assured her that she was a friend of Kate. Just then, they looked at Devil Goat, who was moving toward Celesta. Deborah ran to her and took her inside the O-Girl's room. The Devil Goat started banging on the door when they closed the door. Later, girls started smashing on the floor, and Celesta slipped as if something mysterious had dragged her. Moreover, they listened to the screams of the children. Both get worried about them. Before they could move to save them, Maurice arrived, smashing Irene on the ground and hitting her head on the floor until she lost her senses. Taking the opportunity, Sophie ran from there by grabbing the holy eyes. Realizing St. Lucy's eyes were in Sophie's hand, he followed her. She hid inside the table. Further, other girls had also hidden in the concise room with Sister Deborah. Through the tunnel, Simon tried to move to another room, but there was the ghost of Principal who attempted to capture her. But girls and Miss Deborah had pulled her out, and she had survived. They preferred to run from here because it wasn't a safe place. Aside from this, Holy's eyes started shining when Maurice found her. But he couldn't catch her because the light hadn't allowed him, and she started running. When he was following her, this building started collapsing. Irene, who was watching this mess, gets inside to help her. There is only some wooden place where Sophie was standing. It was difficult to cross because the rope was losing over time. Also, Maurice held her feet, but couldn't grip her because he had fallen. Luckily, she survived and met with Irene. Meanwhile, she had given the holy eyes to Irene. Just then, Maurice arrived, and she had shined the light on him. It made him collapse, and Irene started weeping because she had lost her friend. When she sat to touch her, he held her hand and snatched the holy eyes. He was the owner now, and a nun appeared from behind. Aside from this, Kate tried to get outside, but Goat again chased them, and they confined themselves in the room. When they locked the door with a plank, Devil Goat struck with a horn that penetrated Simone's body. They ran away by taking Simone with them. Aside from this, Irene tried to snatch the holy eyes, but he had made her fly and started burning her body. But she had survived by thinking about her mother. Deborah, who never believed in miracles, had started believing in them. In addition, Sophie tried to escape, but Nun was everywhere. When she came outside, Devil Nun created wood planks around them. Devil Nun is about to kill Sophie, but Deborah and Irene have turned the alcohol into Jesus Christ. Through this blood, Devil Nun was eliminated, and they survived. Also, Mirausi had become free because Devil Nun was destroyed. Everyone was pleased because they were safe and sound. In the last scene, Maurice returns to Kate and Sophie by saying goodbye to Irene.